at the Point Defiance Marina Bay to talk about salmon and the challenges they continue to face in the state of Washington, including hatcheries, hydropower, and harvesting. Let's get into it with hatcheries. Hatcheries are a place where salmon are raised in a controlled environment for commercial and environmental purposes. We sat down with Wayne Harmon, and he told us the history of hatcheries.
Wayne Harmon, President, Northwest Salmon Research. We look back and we see that this tipping point really started to swing as people from the east and human population began to come, and money was involved, and lack of foresight. So we're looking around the mid to late 1800s, okay. And that's proven by the commercial fishing industry, even back then, saw that the numbers were dwindling. And the first salmon hatchery that was ever started in the state of Washington was out at the mouth of the Columbia River in the late 1800s. 1893 was the first salmon hatchery. So clear back then, because of economic reasons, because of money, and them seeing the dwindling resource, the light bulb went off. Well, hey, maybe we can help make more salmon, farm more salmon, so that we can keep this heyday.
Next up, we talked with Matthew Lonsdale, a marine biologist, about the pros and cons of having hatcheries in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, so some of the pros of the hatchery is guaranteed that you are going to be able to have fish that fertilize their eggs and then are grown, and so it is a way that we are able to say, yes, we actually have fish, and that they are returning, and that we are able to produce the kids to be able to go back out into the ocean, right? And then another one is that it allows for researchers to do all sorts of amazing work, and so they're able to actually sit down and look at some of the genetics of the fish, and bring do that sort of a thing. So they're looking at how populations have changed over time, and all of that. Some of the cons of the hatchery. It is becoming one of those where it's almost like a monoculture, that there isn't a lot of ability for salmon to have sort of their natural and native ways. So for example, one of the things that hatcheries do is that they feed the fish, which is great. But when you feed fish, it's a surface feeding method, right? And so the fish that are more likely to survive are the fish that go, oh, my food's now at the surface of the water. In the wild, the food is not at the surface of the water, it's throughout the water column and mostly at the bottom, right? And so what's happening is you have a lot of fish that are used to getting fed at the surface, and so they're being trained to be at that surface level. And if those are the ones that are surviving, when they get out into the river ecosystem, they're running into problems because now it's really easy for predators to pick them off because they're spending their time at the surface of the water, right?
Our next topic that's giving us trouble in the state of Washington is hydropower and dams. The process of hydropower is when fast-moving or flowing water is used to make energy for humans to use. It's considered a renewable source of energy, but poses lots of problems for the local salmon population. Alexis Beard agreed to talk to us and demonstrate how hydropower and dams work.
So, my name is Alexis Beard, STEM Technologies, SAMI. So overall, with hydropower, I want you first to look at this demonstration. Large container of sand here. And we now pour water, simulated rainfall. I know it isn't that much rain doesn't fall at once, but the water flows in. Notice the water is simply flowing down the channel freely. The water is able to go any direction that it wants to go or can go based on the topography. Now, we introduce an artificial feature, or our hydroelectric dam. Place it and look what happens to the water flow. The water suddenly begins to build up behind the structure, and then a tiny fraction of what flowed before is now flowing down the channel.
Then we continued talking with Matthew Lonsdale about the good and the bad of hydropower in Washington State.
Some of the pros are that water is constantly flowing. We're good with all of those sorts of things. The dams also, not just for hydropower, they're also providing water storage, so it helps prevent flooding. And so a lot of the dams kind of do a dual purpose that way, so lowland areas don't get flooded all that often anymore. And it also stores water for summer use for irrigation. So all of these are some of the pros. Some of the cons. Most of these hydropower plants were built at a time when thinking about fish, specifically salmon, returning was not really considered. And so as a result, there's been some retrofitting of dams to include like fish ladders or fish cannons and all of that, but it is really a stopgap measure and is not adequate. Like the best way to make it so the fish can return is to take the dams out, right?
Our final topic is salmon harvesting. This is when salmon are caught either in the ocean or a controlled environment. This has plenty of positive impacts for humans, but negatively impacts the environment. Matthew Lonsdale has some thoughts on the issue.
Things of it, right? So the commercial harvesting of fish, when you get salmon, those salmon are caught on boats in the ocean. So this is before they are returning to land, right? They are a great source of nutrients. They're like in terms of meats, they're a really sustainable meat, in that it's not producing a lot of carbon dioxide to be able to actually like raise them, right? Whereas things like cattle or chickens, there's a lot more carbon dioxide produced to raise those sorts of things. So in those ways, it's pretty good. The fish catch that we have in our state, and Alaska and Oregon and California and the provincial governments of Canada have really, really strict regulations on harvest catch and harvest allotments, right? And so the West Coast fisheries, and especially the Alaskan fisheries, actually do a very good job of not over harvesting for the salmon to return and do population, like return for the populations, right? And so there is a way to be able to harvest salmon in the wild where it is not necessarily a detriment in that it's like an overfishing issue. The biggest issue is just not having enough fish to begin with. So you can't really overfish something that just doesn't exist, right?
As you can see from the experts we have talked to, salmon are in grave danger, and they need our help so we can continue to conserve their species and have the privilege of utilizing their resources. Be mindful of the pollution you create and the impact you have on the environment. Together, we can save the salmon. And now for the legal stuff. Thank you to Wayne Harmon, Alexis Beard, and Matthew Alonso for sitting down with us. Shout out to Mason Tinsley, our chief editor, and Eric Vasquez, our camera operator. Also thanks to Wikimedia Commons, PH here, and Pixabay for supplying us with images and video content. Heather Gilson also let us use her camera equipment, so thank you to her. And most important of all, thank you for the Point Defiance Marina Bay, Point Defiance Park, and Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium, and the Science and Math Institute for letting us use their space. And our lawyers also want you to know that no salmon were harmed in the making of this video. I've been your host, Connor Sanders, signing you out.